Yo, 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 what's up, what's up, what's up? Give up the rack. Hello to my fellow revolutionaries, and I welcome you back after the weekend. I hope you enjoyed your weekend and were able to escape the clutches of capital. And as members of the working class, you were able to take a hold, savor, and enjoy this luxury, this idea of free time, which I have to agree with Marx's interpretation of the idea of wealth, that it's actually got a lot to do not with material abundance, but more to do with an abundance of time or liberty as it is associated with time. And so if you have ample free time because you're freed up from your bonds with labor, your need to sustain your existence, if you're able to liberate yourself from those needs and you can just kind of live and exist in a way that gives you purpose and fulfillment, then that is truly not only a wealthy individual life, but if you live in a society which provides that for everyone, then you truly live in the most wealthy society. And so I hope you enjoyed your little taste of that, which is what we refer to as the weekend time, which, like I said, capital cannot touch us unless you have very special arrangements. And if you do have special arrangements, then, and you do sell your labor power, make sure it's to the highest and best bidder, and you get penalty rates. And I am preaching it, my brother. Amen. Thank you very much, Jerry Poppins. You know exactly what I'm speaking about. So, yes, after that little introduction about the importance of the weekend and praise be to baby Jesus, just Jesus in the baby form, not his later evolutions, just like the Pokemon. We prefer the original, the baby style of Jesus in this live stream, and don't you forget it. So today, if you're wondering if the title of the stream was not telling enough, we're going to be looking at technocracy. Okay, damn straight. He's our favorite style of Jesus. Yeah, we're going to be looking at the idea of technocracy. Okay, so from my understanding of technocracy, and we will get to that by the end of this live stream, I'm sure. But my understanding of technocracy is this idea that you have technocrats that run society. So a technocrat is like an expert or someone who is highly skilled in an area. So they have expertise in something, and they are the types of people that are to run society. It's a technocratic idea in the sense that a technocrat is someone who is versed in a particular field, and so you would kind of divest to them. You would give them responsibilities. You would refer to them in order to make decisions because, like, they are knowledgeable in a given area. And so, a technocracy is a way of structuring or ordering society, organizing society hierarchically. Let's be honest, that lends itself to putting experts at the top of the hierarchy, as opposed to, in a democratic society where you put maybe elected officials at the top of the society, or you elect to have, a supreme ruler for a set period of time, like a president or something like that. So it's antithetical, or it's different. It's differs from democracy in the sense that it's like, well, why would we even bother, putting elected officials at the head of society? What the hell would they know? Like, it's just a popularity contest at the end of the day. Let's be honest. And, like, where does a popularity contest get you? It gets you, with results like the world we see it today. And so the argument from technocrats or people that are advocates for technocracy is that you should structure society in a way that has these enlightened and intellectual individuals, these people with abundant experience and knowledge in given fields. You should hand over the organization of society to them. And so, like, it really makes logical sense. Like, you've got to give it to the idea of technocracy that, like, people who are knowledgeable in something should be, kind of in charge of something. It does make sense. So I'm guessing there's a difference between technocracy and assuming leaders based on merit. Did I ruin your setup? No, not at all. I'm guessing there's a difference between technocracy and assuming leaders based on merit. What's up? What's up? What's up? Give up, Iraq. It is the Wings of Cheese. Oh, and they have descended into the building. Thank you very much for your lovely introduction. As opposed to giving up the rock, we now give up Iraq. And that is what Bush said to Saddam one fateful day in the early 2000s. Now, I'm guessing there's a difference between technocracy and assuming leaders based on merit. When you say leaders based on merit, like, what type of merit are you talking about? Because you would actually assume that technocracy is this ideal of actually giving society, handing society over to people with the merit to organize it based on their knowledgeable areas. So, like, if you mean assuming leaders based on merit, as in through a popularity contest, which is effectively what democracy is, then, like, they were the most meritorious because everybody voted for that person, even though they might have absolutely no knack for the technical skill required to run government or to run a particular field of the economy or industry or something like that. But, like, they were the most charismatic, and so they got elected. Well, you keep mentioning experts. Experts would have the most merit. No, yes. So I'm guessing there's a difference between technocracy and assuming leaders based on merit. Yes, experts have the most merit, I would say. And so, like, this idea of technocracy actually is quite endearing in, like, modernity. Like, modern society is based around rationality, reasoned thinking, and scientific progress. And so, like, when you think about rational thinking and when you think about scientific progress, then, like, you leave that sort of stuff to the experts. Experts come to decisions, they debate amongst themselves, and they try to get consensus. Even if they don't, they go and experiment with things, and then they berate each other, and then they find a way forward that kind of moves and progresses the human race. And so, like, that's, like, this stuff makes a lot of sense on paper, technocracy. And so let's get a proper definition of it. I'm going to defer now to not an expert, but someone who can assume the role of an expert given their absolute access to the entirety of the human race's digitized information. With such efficiency and speed, it boggles the human mind, the very limited human mind that we have. So let's talk to AI, specifically ChatGPT, and figure out, what the hell's technocracy, so we can get a better understanding, and then we can actually have a proper discussion about this. Can you please define for us what technocracy is? Question mark. All right, here we go. Let's hope Mr. Chat doesn't have my search history info. Well, depending, I guess, on the levels of access of information that ChatGPT has, you never know, Jerry Poppins, because ChatGPT or OpenAI have landed themselves in a lot of hot water over, the last few years, because they have shot first and asked questions later. They have grab dashed lots and lots of information, and they're being sued by multiple parties who, found out after the fact that they got access to people's information on the internet without, going through proper channels or even paying for it. And so they may have access to stuff that we probably don't even understand, especially if they have agreements with other, tech giants and tech lords and stuff like that. We'd be very surprised potentially as to what information they can get access to. And if you look at someone like Elon Musk, who now is, pioneering the Department of Government Efficiency in America, and just smashing down government departments, and not in the way that you're thinking. I'm not talking about basically hiring. No, it's not hiring. Just firing large droves of public servants. I'm talking about getting access to government information systems, social security information, for instance, or information from the IRS that hey, they really apparently have no legal claim to. He's getting reams and reams of information on every American citizen or anyone associated with America, and they're not sure what they're getting access to this information for. But if I was someone that owned a large language model and an AI system, and I was getting access to the entire database of, one of the most intricate and largest governmental systems on the face of the planet, I know what I'd be doing with it. I'd be feeding it into my large language model, just saying, there's my little tinfoil hat, long-range conspiracy theorists notion for you, Jerry Poppins. Now, here we have a definition. Let me kindly read it out to you good folk. Technocracy is a system of governance or social organization where decision-making power is held by technical experts, scientists, engineers, economists, and other specialists, rather than by elected politicians or business elite. In technocracy, the idea is that problems should be solved based on expertise, scientific knowledge, and technical efficiency, not political negotiation or popular opinion. The term often implies prioritizing what works over political ideologies, organizing society around rational planning, data. Just for all of you people that are listening to this, who I just gave a little bit of a spiel about AI and tech giants, and here we go. So organizing society around rational planning, data, and technical management, replacing political leaders with those judged most competent in the field. Now, the question begs, after reading these 3 dot points, is who decides? Who decides who's the most competent in their field? It is based. This is a form of governance based on scientific knowledge, technical efficiency, and not political negotiation or popular opinion. Okay, so how do these people get to their positions? Historically, technocracy gained attention through the early 20th century, especially during the Great Depression, when faith in traditional politics was low. Some technocrats envisaged entire economies being run like efficient machines, planned by engineers rather than influenced by markets or parliaments. In short, technocracy equals rule by experts rather than rule by politicians or capitalists. Dun, dun, dun. So it's anti-capitalist, people, what we're talking about here. And what is really interesting is, can we just take this back a notch? Some technocrats, let me just highlight it for you if you're wondering. Some technocrats envision entire economies being run like efficient machines planned by engineers and rather than influenced by markets or parliament. Now, planning an economy, most people would associate that with evil communism. Only dirty communists and socialists would have the audacity to claim that you could plan society. And so you must see here that there are a lot of crossovers, actually, not just with how a capitalist society is run based on merits and meritocracy, because the invisible hand of the market decides what is the most efficient way of distributing resources and all of the fruits of everyone's labor. But like it also borrows from the idea that like people, given the right station, should be deciding what's best, planning. And that is much more of a desirable trait than, like I said, leaving it up to the invisible hand of the market, i.e. the anarchy of a market system. Now, what I would like to point out here, and this is my theory on this, okay? Now, I've been mulling this over for a long time in kind of light of the exploration that we've been doing into surveillance capitalism and technofeudalism, that it is likely in the techno-heavy age that we live in today that technocracy is not a far-fetched notion anymore. It's briefly mentioned here in this definition that it gained a lot of attention in the early 20th century, and this is true. Technocracy was really being put forward and advocated for by people that, like they've said here, during the Great Depression and like some of the crises and the general ineptitudes, I guess you would say, of capitalism to solve people's problems. So, you know, depression events. I was censored. Dun, dun, dun. All right, go on over. I've created a censored channel in the Discord. So go on over to La Discord. It's called Censored Comments. So like go over to that that channel there and put in what you're saying and I'll read it out. But like don't try to bash it here because then we'll just all get kicked off, apparently. It's just the way it works. It's just the way it is. Oh, actually, have you already written it in there? Oh, you could argue the US is ruled by technocratic oligarchs. I think you could. You definitely could. And like, I think they would actually argue that they are doing that. Like, that's what, you know, effectively something like Doge and Elon Musk are doing at the moment. You know, he is a technocrat in the sense that he's an expert in business and like he's a multi-billionaire and he's run lots of businesses. So like he knows about efficiency. And so like, let's bring him in to gut out the government. And so like, you know, it's technocratic because he's an expert in something. And so like they've gotten him in to gut out the government service. So he's not an expert in government. He's just an expert in making organizations that are bureaucratic more efficient, supposedly. And the evidence put forward by his supporters and the president and himself is that, you know, he's run a lot of businesses, that kind of thing. Yeah, CC can be code for a comment we posted. I did. Yeah, so yeah, like they're like if you look at oligarchy as in rule by a few, and like there's a crossover with technocracy because you could have a rule by a few technical experts, then yes, I think there is an argument that could be made that like the oligarchy in America are usually people with expertise of some sort. But like they're usually associated with like capitalists for the most part in the American setting. And so like, you know, you could argue that they're a oligarchy of technocrats that have economic expertise. And is usually the argument in modern day liberal democratic societies is that you have people that have run businesses and all that sort of stuff. And like, you know, that's why they lay claim to having, you know, kind of political claims to fame. So like, you know, someone like Malcolm Turnbull in Australia, like he's a millionaire and he's run lots of businesses. And so we let him have a go at being president. What about Donald Trump? Like prime minister, not president. What about Donald Trump? Like, you know, his big ticket into his first presidency was like, you know, he's run a lot of businesses. He's a millionaire. And like, if you know you don't like him, you're fired, like kind of thing. And so like his technical expertise in economic or matters of commerce won him a ticket, but like he still had to go through a democratic process. Ooh, I was censored. You were censored for your humble opinion. So let us learn something from this, Jerry Poppins. Your opinion is only humble in your opinion, and it is rather dangerous in the opinion of our techno-feudal overlords within the Google system, let's just say, the alphabet system, or the YouTube ecosystem. Did you put one in? Has anyone written in there? I just want to make sure I'm seeing that. Well, please add, Jerry Poppins, your comment, if you want me to read it out, to the Discord in the censored comments section. I really don't understand why yours was censored, though. You could argue the US is ruled by technocratic oligarchs. Like, what the hell's wrong with that? That is really not that controversial. I'm really worried, actually, about this channel, I must say, in the future. Like, all the videos, like the views have just dropped off of all my videos and stuff like that. And, like, you know, comments like that are being censored. Like, what's wrong with that one, Wings of Cheese? Like, that is not controversial at all. That's an astute political observation. If you were a political scientist, they'd give you a medal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not even controversial. Whatever. Anyway, so as I was getting at, like, I have been mulling this over for a while now, and in the context of techno-feudalism, the context of surveillance capitalism, in the information age, we have heightened levels of technology that we as a human race have never had access before. This is especially true when you consider the context of technocracy coming out of the 20th century, the early 20th century, in response to the ravages of the Great Depression. People were upset. People had lost faith in capitalism itself. They were even losing faith, you would say, in politics and democratic institutions. Chairman of the court, so Jerry Poppins, says, I've been thinking that Musk and Zucks are second wave technocrats. 3-letter orgs have taken advantage of tech as soon as it was available. Zuck and Musk are the first owner-operators, so to speak. I've been thinking of Musk and Zuck as second-wave technocrats. 3-letter orgs have taken advantage of tech as soon as it was available. Here, Ollie Atlas, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the stream. Zuck and Musk are the first owner-operators, so to speak. I don't understand the middle sentence there. 3-letter orgs have taken advantage of tech as soon as it was available. But like, yeah, they are second-wave technocrats. I wonder what you mean by that. If you would divulge a little bit more, Jerry Poppins, I would actually be interested to know what you mean by second wave technocrats, because they are second wave in the historical sense, as like technocracy was being promoted at this time a century ago, and lo and behold, here we are, and like it's being talked about again. And so, like, you could argue from that perspective, they are second wave technocrats, but I don't think that's what you're getting at. So if you could just enlighten a little bit further, I would appreciate that. But yes, hello, Ollie Atlas, and welcome. We're talking about technocracy. And if you are familiar with the term, then you would know that it is society run by experts, as opposed to the current system that we have, which is societal organization run through democratic means, so through elected officials or representatives. Not that they aren't influenced by technocrats themselves, so technical experts, they usually are. It's just that it is the elected representative in a liberal democratic society that makes the ultimate decision and gets put in their place to make those decisions by the fact that you have people out there that pick the politicians that go with them, that work with them. So let me go back to my wild theory, please. If you look at kind of if you look at things from a historical materialist lens, right? So Marx's analysis of human history is that you have kind of a mode of production, and the mode of production kind of is the setting for everything, the ideological framework, etc., etc. And like the social relations in that society, like everything is built around the mode of production. And so you have like an internal kind of social relation between a class struggle between two main players that are relating to each other, and then everyone else that's kind of built around that. So in the feudal system, it was, between the serf and the lord. They produced all the value that everyone lived off. In the capitalist system, it's between kind of capital and labor, and like that central relation between those two forces is what the entire of the social organization is built around. And so like in our system at the moment, we have a democracy that kind of sits on top of the mode of production based on capitalism. And I would argue, though, if you think that like we are potentially moving to a form of technocracy, right, where we have technical experts that are going to be laying claim and wanting to run society, and you think about like Yanis Varoufakis's kind of argue that we've moved into technofeudalism, then you could argue that technocracy is kind of the societal political structure that kind of justifies and reproduces techno-feudalism. So if you believe that we've moved into a techno-feudal society where like we've moved away from capitalism as the main mode of production, and the main social relations is between all the people that create data and then all the people that control data and use it for their own purposes to basically rule over society, technocracy is a logical progression of that style of government, because you have of that style of governance over society, because instead of having democratic means, you would have a group of experts that kind of run society in the interest of techno-feudalists. And so this would make sense from a historical materialist perspective. Let me just give you an example here, because I know you love your historical materialism wings of cheese. Now, if you looked at the transition, so the revolution of capitalism as a mode of production over... I tried again, but it was censored. It's in the Discord. Give me a second, I will read it out. If you look at the transition from feudalism as a mode of production to capitalism as a mode of production, what you actually had there, the revolutionary element in society within those class relations or those social relations, that kind of was the force that changed everything from feudalism to capitalism. The social grouping in there was the middle class, so the bourgeois class within a feudal arrangement sat outside that central relation between serf and lord. They were separate. They were number 3 in the love triangle there. They took power, they seized power, and revolutionized not only the mode of production itself, but revolutionized society, like the social relations. And it was a middle class revolution. The bourgeois have always been referred to as the middle class. They were middle, not in the sense that they didn't have power, like they had a lot of money. They actually took over from the aristocracy and the nobility and stuff, because the money became the new source of power and all that sort of stuff. And they were able to kind of develop their prowess because of the wealth that they had been hoarding, let's say, or collecting, to be a little bit more neutral about it. But it was a middle class revolution. Now, in the Marxian kind of tradition, let's say very idealistically, so like, just being an idealist, like hopeful and optimistic about it, you look at the central relation between labor and capital, and you would argue that, like, it is actually the workers. So the laboring class, if they were able to overthrow capital, they would then revolutionize the system, and you would have a revolution in that sense. You would have a revolution a social revolution where workers take control of society and recreate it in their own image. But if you follow the trajectory of what's happened in the past, which it was the middle class that assumed power and became the dominant class, then like you have to have a look at, there's a middle class that exists between labor and capital in the current world, and that is the managerial class. So some call them the professional managerial class. Some just refer to them as, managers generally. So it's like this group of experts that like in society that get educated. So they're not only working class. They get a university education, so a tertiary education usually, and sit as this middle kind of conduit between the working populations and the capitalist interests of the people that control the economy, and they manage capital for the capitalists. They manage their businesses, they manage the general populations in government, they manage workers in like actual business settings, on factory floors and in complex organizations. Yo, what's up? Give up the ruck. Still getting smashed at work. Just listen. Well, listen to this. Here's my wild theory for you, 4AS. So they sit in the middle. They are a middle class that helps capital rule over the working classes. Capitalism and an industrial society has become more and more advanced and more complicated. You've actually had to insert a middle class of people, a managerial class, a technocratic class, a group of experts to help manage capital and capital's interests. And they have become so kind of powerful in this system. They've got wealth, they've got their own power, they've got their own ideology, they've got their own way of seeing the world. They are like more attuned to environmental matters. They're more attuned to kind of political correct issues. They have like more of a progressive outlook on society, but they still hold dear the ideas and levels of power, and they hold dear, obviously, like, wealth accumulation and stuff like that, because they definitely like their money, and like the sophistication that comes with it. But like that's the middle class. And so like if you think about the trajectory of the past revolution and change from one mode of production to another, it was the middle class that took over, not the working class. It wasn't the peasants who revolted. It was the middle class, the bourgeoisie that enlisted the peasantry, the serfs of the old world, and said, hey, come fight for us, we'll liberate you, kind of thing. And then they ended up being the new oppressors. And so like, you can see that pattern forming now in a technocratic example. You have the managerial class who are just like, aren't the capitalists shit? Like, look at what capitalism has done. It's ruined the world. Like, it's given us such wonderful things, but it's destroying the environment. It's just destroying civil society. They're laying waste to like, our important civics institutions, all in the name of profit. Look at Wall Street, the bastards. Look at like, what all of these industrialists have done by, destroying the planet. We're the experts. We've got university educations. We've run big organizations and big businesses. Give us the reins. You come and fight and die for us working class people. And us technocrats will use our expertise to plan society in everyone's interests. And so like here's like a long range theory for me, from me, for you to consider in a historical materialist outlook of the way that like things have operated before, that it is the technocrats, the managerial class, the people that are like calling the shots at the moment in like our cultural settings, the people that the working class are really rallying against at the moment. Like, when I was talking about like people being anti-woke and stuff like that, like anti-woke sentiment that's been coming from the working class and coming from the upper echelons of the capitalist class, this is like a reaction to the middle class, the ideas of the middle class. It is the middle class and the professionals that run businesses, run universities, run media companies and stuff like that. This managerial class that like sets the tone for what the objectives are for these organizations and all that sort of stuff. They're the ones that are spilling force this woke agenda and like the signing off on like content creation and cultural institutions and NGOs and all that sort of stuff. It's this middle level managerial class that pats themselves on the back and talks in language of political correctness and all that sort of stuff that the working class are rejecting and the capitalist class is obviously rejecting. You can see that like kind of at the top at the moment. There's an attack from both ends to destroy like this ideology of the middle class. But like these are the types of people that inherit society from recent kind of history in terms of evolutionary changes. So like just think about that. All right. Ideally, this is Ollie Atlas, ideally, said experts would be voted into offices as advisors or in charge of what they understand, but under democratic lens. That's a good point, and I was going to get to that later. So let's hold that thought, because I think that is a really, really good point. Hey, Buster, I'm back. Good. I'm glad you're back. I hope you heard my little rant there, because that was aimed at you just in a historical materialist sense. Even experts make errors. They do, and they've never got consensus. So let's go back now to what Jerry Poppins was talking about before. So let's just read the whole comment, because I'm trying to get my head around this. I've been thinking that Musk and Zucks are the second wave of technocrats. Three-letter orgs have taken advantage of tech as soon as it was available. Zucks and Musk are the first owner-operators, so to speak. So it's been done before. We just weren't aware of it. Companies like the CIA have been operating in this fashion for a while, but they were just quiet about it. This new wave of technocrats are front and center. Think of the like of Zuck and Musk being the next ruling emperors, but the crown is no longer in the shadows. Second wave technocrats. I like that theory because it does align kind of with my thoughts on this issue, I must say, Jerry Poppins, because the technocrats of the past were people that were like limited to this managerial class that I was talking about before, the people that manage capital in the interests of the capitalist class and to kind of make sure that the working class does their thing and continues to produce value. But these second wave technocrats are not just experts in the shadows that are just like, we really manage society. We would be the best people to kind of, run the show. But like these managers, let's say, these people that have, thanks to venture capitalists and Silicon Valley culture, these people that have managed their own businesses. So they are people of the managerial class, even though they are also entrepreneurial. These people have started their own business and they've risen up, from the ground. Classic rags to riches story. And they have a managerial ethos. They haven't just played games on the stock market and like bought out other companies and run the world like little capitalists and stuff like that, who like kind of invest in the right thing and produce profit. These are people that have had a vision and they've managed it into a billion-dollar industry, and they want to recreate the world in their own image now. They really think that they are absolutely wonderful because they have managed the whole process, and so they think their technical capabilities in terms of organizational tactics are second to none, and so they can justify what they think in terms of, technically running society as technocrats. So yes, I think the second wave technocrats are different to first wave technocrats, who are just people who were educated, who thought like educated people should be running government. I think there's innocence, there's humility in that. It's just a recognition of expertise in the face of populism. Whereas these second wave technocrats are like very, very like, and I just mean this neutrally. I don't mean this in a pejorative way because it is a neutral term. These second wave technocrats are narcissistic in the sense that like they do see themselves as kind of being God's gift to humanity, because like, in 20 years, they've gone from like, fabled or the mythology, as the mythology suggests, which is not the case, but this, as the mythology suggests, working out of mum and dad's garage to owning, like, basically huge chunks of the entire global economy. And so they really do believe that, like, the world is a reflection of their own interests. They turn around and they see the world reflected. Hey, like, look at the way the world runs today. Like, I did that. Like, the reason, like, look at people from the PayPal mafia. Look at, Musk and Peter Thiel and stuff like that. They're like, look, everyone exists and pays for stuff online, and, like, everyone has a software, it has software now. Like, we did that. Like, we've changed the entire world. And so, like, we should run it, like, kind of thing. Like, LOL, the CIA is innocent. Well, look, I know how you've described it here. Companies like the CIA have been operating in a fashion for a while. Now, I wouldn't call the CIA a company, and I wouldn't call them technocrats as such. Like, they are elements of the deep state, and they have arms which operate like companies and stuff like that, and they have arms that operate as basically anything. So, like, no, I wouldn't call them innocent as an organization, but the experts inside the CIA, as much as they cop a lot of flack, like, they've still done a lot to kind of protect, Western interests from, like, real terrorists and stuff like that. And, like, Americans from actual threats to, like, their freedoms, and, like, just their safety. Like, while they've done a lot of nefarious stuff, probably more nefarious than good, like, there's still people in there, experts, that believe that they are doing the right thing and have probably stopped some horrendous things from happening through the course of their history. And so, like, when I say innocent, I don't mean as an organization. I just mean, like, innocent as in experts, people who are not politically, that have no political power, but just have expertise to offer society, would have liked to have formulated a society that would use their expertise in social organization. I think there is merit to that idea. But this is not second wave technocracy, as we will call it, as we will refer to it now. I like that term. Second wave technocracy is about controlling the world for the interests of a small group. It's really, oligarchy, disguised as technocracy. Like, you can say, oh, well, we're technical experts, and so, like, that's why we should run the world. It's just like, well, no, you're just really rich. And you don't want to lose your power. So you want to restructure society to make sure that you stay on top. Let's be honest. So, like, goblins clinging onto their treasure, plotting had to get more power and more gold. Basically, yes. You took the words right out of my mouth there. For yes, that implies they won't be able to stick to a fundamental set of ideals that define their beliefs. In terms of what he said concerning second wave. But yes, I think these second wavers are just generally more interested in the fact that they've helped birth the digital age, and they control much of its infrastructure anyway. So just give us the keys to the human race, because you owe us one anyway. You plebs wouldn't be here living a wonderful 21st century existence if it wasn't for us. You wouldn't have all the niceties that you see around you if it wasn't for us. Now, I just want to say, though, that the middle class of the transition from feudalism to capitalism was, like, kind of defined themselves and renegotiated terms with the existing political establishment, so the aristocracy, the nobility, based on the fact that they accumulated wealth. They were able, through commerce, to accumulate wealth and then transfer that into power. Now, what does the modern or second wave technocrat have? Okay, they have a lot of money, but, like, so do the existing capitalist establishment have a lot of money. And so do, the governments that they control, they have a lot of money. What's the element there that the second wave technocrats have, that, like, the original advocates for technocracy really didn't have access to back in the day? What is it? Ergo, the whole Homelander speech. What's the Homelander speech? link me, please. I would like to know what you're referring to here. Now, I will answer my own question if you're sitting there scratching your head thinking like, what the hell is MysterE talking about? But I would say that the difference of what the technocrats, the second wave technocrats have, that like, their middle class, that the middle class, the bourgeoisie had, like to kind of win over against feudalism. It's not money, it's data. They have access to reams and reams of data. And data is what helps control society in the digital age. It's what type of information you can actually get access to in huge amounts, like ridiculous, mind-boggling amounts that we can't understand as humans. Like we just you could send the whole human race off to try and spend the rest of the lives of the entirety of the human race to digest all of the information that is out there. And I don't think humans would be able to do it justice. We wouldn't be able to have the means to just digest all of the information that is out there. But they're collecting this data, and their means of production, these technocrats, these second wave technocrats, they have the means of collecting all of that data and processing all of that data. That's really more important. This is not just about setting up libraries, to try to just hold on to information. They are processing that data, and they're using it to make decisions. They're using it to make different products, and they're using it soon to structure society in a way that we've never, ever, ever thought possible. And like they're even developing technologies to do this better. They're developing technologies for the new age. Like if the Industrial Revolution is, what made capitalism come to maturity. So like the age of like complex machinery is what is the defining technology of the capitalist, the industrial capitalist. Then the defining technology of the technofeudalists won't be like, in a very sophisticated telecommunications technology, so the Internet of Things that connects the world. No, it'll be the technology that they produce to digest, process, and manipulate all of the information of the digital age. It'll be their AI. Their AI will do this for them. The AI is the only entity known to the human race that can process all of the immense information out there from the digital age and do something with it, and they will control that AI. And like this is exactly what you see going on at the moment. There's an absolute war going on between the technocrats or the tech bros to design and have the best AI. And like there's not just a war amongst them in the West, it is a war of, again, East versus West. China is developing its own AI technology, and so is the West, basically, so is America. And they who control the AI technology will be the ones that control the future. This is as I've heard it described, this is not my opinion, though I do think there's a lot of sense to it. This is a winner-takes-all game here. This is an absolute winner-takes-all game here. It's massive. It's huge battle stakes going on, and whoever creates the AI that is going to be used to kind of control society over the next, I don't know, like 100 years or something like that, like they are going to be supreme being number one, like absolute supreme being. So these are huge ramifications for society at the moment. And that's why it was so crazy to see the other day when we were watching the testimony of Sarah Wynne Williams, the Facebook whistleblower, at that Senate hearing. It was absolutely incredible to hear her say that for, an $18 billion contract with Facebook in China, Facebook, in order to get into the Chinese market, basically not only gave access to and compromised the data and the privacy of US citizens and set up, pop-up data servers on Chinese soil. So basically the CCP had access to Facebook's infrastructure through pop-up servers. But also to sweeten the deal, or to get the deal in the first place, I guess you'd have to investigate it fully to understand and to know. Meta gave access to its AI technologies to the Chinese, who were at the time very much behind the curve when it came to this type of tech development and artificial technology. They were well behind in the race there. And then lo and behold, like, 6 months ago, or not even, like, DeepSeek comes out and, like, basically wipes $1 trillion off the global stock market, because, like, no one knew that China was that far advanced in the AI arms race. And lo and behold, DeepSeek is built off Llama, which is the open source AI technology provided by Meta. And so, like, Meta have been there kind of basically giving the Chinese access to America's understanding of AI. And so, like, if you think of this as like the new Cold War, and it'd be like if, I don't know, the Americans developed some technology, some incredibly sophisticated nuclear weapon during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the Americans, and some American company went over to the Soviet Union just to do business there and was like, here's the plans to this new nuclear missile that, like, separates the Americans and the Soviet Union or something like that. Like, this is huge stuff. But, like, this is the audacity and the temerity of the techno-feudalists, these potential technocrats. They don't really care about geopolitics, because they think that they kind of own the world, and they're not interested in politics. Like, they're not interested in political negotiation and popular opinion. Like, this is about making, organizing society around rational planning, data, and technical management. But for them, it's really about just, like, having the power and having access to the world's population so they can, collect data on them. I don't even think the $18 billion is a huge thing for Meta at the end of the day. Like, $18 billion is a lot, but, like, they're a $1 trillion company. So, like, I don't even know if $18 billion is worth it just to get access to the Chinese market. What they want is access to the Chinese market. Like, I don't even think they want the $18 billion. I think they want data. They want control. And, like, if Meta will be the only American company, the only Western company potentially of that magnitude that have access to the information of a population of 1 billion people that have been guarded behind a firewall for the last 30 years from any type of digital connection to the rest of the world, like, Facebook has access to, like, part of the human race that, like, no other techno-feudalist, no other tech bro could ever dream possible. Like, Musk and Bezos, like, they have nothing on Meta now. If Meta has somehow pried open the, like, access to the last remaining bastion that, like, Western tech lords could not get access to, they now got access to the Chinese people. And so, like, there's going to be a blending together and a melding together now of these two, civilizations that are standing opposed to one another in the new Cold War. And so, like, technocracy is interesting. It makes sense. It makes sense if you look at it on face value. That, like, this is a real interesting way to organize society. And, like, I would just like to note that I think that this could work. And I think it could work in the sense of the way that Ollie Atlas had referred to before. You can have technocracy and democracy at the same time. Like, it's almost a very syndicalist kind of notion of society. So the anarcho-syndicalists, or syndicalists generally, let's just say, were, like, these type of socialists that believe that you just divide up the economy into, like, the biggest industries. So, like, let's just say industrial sector of the economy, so industrial production, health, education, commerce and finance, and construction, and mining, or something like that. You divvy it up into the biggest kind of sectors of the economy, and then you allow, like, people to unionize in those sectors of the economy, and conglomerations of those unions, they come together, and those people decide what happens with that sector of the economy. basically. And so the unions, all the workers that are involved in all of those separate sectors of the economy, they use democratic means to decide what direction each sector of the economy is going to work towards. So you could do that in a nation, you could do that internationally, but let's just say you did it on a national scale. It'd be like unions conglomerating in different sectors of the economy to decide what happens in that sector of the economy. And they appoint people from within that sector of the economy to go and represent. So like the people, like they go represent like the federal government or something like that, and they make decisions, you know, kind of on a geopolitical scale. They make decisions for the entirety of the country, but it's all done through working people's associations and like from particular sections of the economy. It's all very kind of democratic and stuff like that. Now, you could have that in a technocratic sense. You could carve up the society or your nation into like specific areas, like, you know, the education sector and like health sector and construction again, or industry, or like mining, or you know, high tech industries, or like, you know, what have you, communications. Like you could, you know, split society up into technical areas of expertise and then democratically elect people to govern each sector of the economy. And so you could do that through like a, you know, liberal democratic sense. So like you'd have all of these people that are, I don't know, technically orientated towards something. Maybe they've got a lot of experience in an industry. Maybe they've got a lot of, maybe they've got a degree in that area, or they've got a, you know, some type of certification in that area of expertise. And then they can run as a representative to kind of organize that sector of the economy. So you could have technocracy and democracy, but you don't ever hear these technocrats or the proponents of technocracy speaking about it in that vein. You say it's just like, oh, it's either democracy or it's technocracy, and you really want to go down the democracy path. Look where democracy's led us. You know, let's just let the experts take over. But the question remains, and we asked this right at the beginning when we first started looking at this: who decides? Who decides who these technical experts are? Like that one Futurama episode where these alien scammers were so hungry for data, they bought everything on Earth and went through time to steal stuff. Yeah, and they like smell stuff and everything, and they just can't get over the insatiable lust that they have for getting access to more and more information. Very prescient stuff from the writers of Futurama there, no doubt. They're very good at that type of stuff. So anyway, let's have a bit of a look-sees, shall we, at this idea of technocracy, and like have a look at it through the view of the media. And like this particular piece is called "How Technocracy Has Become Our Reality." It's the listening post. It's by Al Jazeera English, and like the text is, as tech billionaires infiltrate the White House, the question looms, who really rules us, the government or Silicon Valley? And so like they put technocracy just down to, you know, rule of kind of this billionaire group of tech bros from Silicon Valley. That is wrong. Okay, that is not what technocracy is about. Technocracy is ruled by experts. It's got nothing to do with them being kind of people from the tech sector, the high tech sector of Silicon Valley. But like they might give us some interesting insights here about like, you know, technocracy generally and how it's being kind of viewed now in a 21st century context, especially during the second reign of Emperor Donald Trump. So like let's see what they have to say for it. But I think it's good that we kind of clarified what like technocracy is really about, as opposed to kind of the fabled delusions of like a liberal media establishment that's really basically trying to survive in a world that it just can't understand anymore. But let's see what they have to say. And like, you know, as always, we'll stop and chat as we see fit. Let's do this.
What is tech authoritarianism?
Tech authoritarianism. So that's got nothing to do with technocracy. Tech authoritarianism, just so you know, You probably know anyway, but I'll just clarify. Techno-authoritarianism or tech authoritarianism is this idea that these tech bros, so these people that rule over all of the information technologies out there, they are ushering in an anti-democratic society, an illiberal form of society that is built on authoritarianism and is being influenced, if not run, overtly by like techno-feudalists, people that run Silicon Valley.
Authoritarianism is about replacing existing democratic structures with governments controlled by billionaires and their technology systems.
A notion that technology and the ideology that informs it can govern human beings and centralize power among a certain elite.
Any kind of
Okay, so this is interesting. Okay, so they're like, so tech authoritarianism to this person is about like actually instituting technologies and the ideologies surrounding that. Now, Jerry Poppins, before we actually started this, like put forward to me this idea of cyberocracy. Has anyone ever come across cyberocracy before? I hadn't, but like it's very, very limited in like the information that you can get on it, but it actually has more to do with the technology than the technocrats themselves. So let us have a look. Then I think it's an important actually interlude. Let's have a look at what that is. So can you please define what cyberocracy is? Of course. Cyberocracy is a hypothetical form of government where information processing, especially through computers, networks, advanced communication technologies, becomes the main basis of power and decision making, rather than just individuals, political parties, or even technical experts. So it's a development on technological grounds beyond the idea of technical experts, so beyond technocracy. In a cyberocracy, authority is based on who controls, processes, and interprets information most effectively. Authority is based on who controls, processes, and interprets information effectively. Like, you could give that over to AI, because AI is able to process and interpret information. Decision making could be highly decentralized, fast and data driven. Computers, artificial intelligence, and vast information networks like the internet would be central tools of governance. Traditional hierarchies like political parties or bureaucracies might be weakened or reshaped by the flow of information. Cyberocracy equals governance dominated by the control and flow of information through advanced technology rather than by individuals or expertise alone. So individuals and experts still are players. However, much of, I guess, governance is just done through information technologies themselves. This is a concept still mostly explored in theory and science fiction, but some thinkers argue we are slowly moving towards a cyberocratic elements in society today. You know what? Yes, I would. Yes, please. Do your thing, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is on fire today. Okay, so technocracy. Who rules? Technical experts. Cyberocracy. Those who control and process information. Interesting. So it would seem more fittingly then, instead of calling them second wave technocracy or technocrats, second wave technocracy, we could just refer to this as cyberocracy, because these, tech billionaires that want to control society now, they control and process all of the information for the world's populations. Like, look at Palantir, for example. What does Palantir do? Well, Palantir is an organization that offers services to the government, like data analytical services, data processing services, and AI technologies to the government to help them with its military operations. So like defense issues, actual offensive stuff, like out in the actual field, military operations, and like, at home, it does some stuff, for like, public order, let's say, and like keeping control of the population, like policing and all that sort of stuff. And like they control and process the information on behalf of government. So government gives them access to all of their databases, and then they come back and they process that information and they feed it back to the government and say, hey, this is the most effective way to go out and kill people, basically, or this is the most effective way to go out and control people, or this is the strategy that you need to undertake based on like all of this information that we're feeding. Like during I think they were involved with Afghanistan. I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure they're involved with Afghanistan and maybe even Iraq. Or the Middle East to a certain extent, where they were like, they were coming into conflict a lot with people that were using kind of guerrilla tactics to fight against the American forces. So they were basically, sending in civilians that like had bombs under cars or bombs strapped to them, and they were really doing a lot of damage to American soldiers. And killing a lot of American soldiers, and they're hard to track because they could be anyone. And so like they were doing data processing and controlling that process and that information processing for government, and then feeding back tactics to try and influence their military tactics and their strategy. And so like you could argue that cyberocracy is more of what we've got going on with these tech billionaires at the moment, these techno-feudalists, these cloud capitalists, these surveillance capitalists. They are not only taking on the jobs of the government and all that sort of stuff, but they have the keys to the infrastructure, that they basically control the products themselves. Like I would assume that these, military organizations have absolutely no idea, like how these AI systems come to their decisions. They just take it on face value and hope for the best kind of thing. It's a scary world. Basis of power. Technocracy, expertise and technical knowledge. Cyberocracy, information networks, data analysis, AI. Basis of power comes from AI and data analysis. This is crazy. Decision making. Hey, Honey 32, yo, what's up? Give up the rack. And welcome to today's session. We are looking at technocracy. And specifically, we're doing an analysis of technocracy versus cyberocracy, which is interesting. Decision-making based on scientific expertise and efficiency. Cyberocracy based on managing and interpreting massive data flows. Now, this is actually interesting, I must say, because we've actually dealt with this, myself, 4AS, and Kareem, in a podcast episode that we did just probably a few months ago now, where we talked about like what it would look like in a future society where AI kind of basically took over and started controlling society and like planning the economy basically, and not leaving it up to the invisible hand of the market anymore. And like you could do this now because of the amount of data that we have and information, where you couldn't really plan economies efficiently before because you didn't have access to data. You had people processing data and using their intuition and their best judgment, whereas like AI actually can have access to reams and reams of information that you could never have thought possible before. And like the big critiques of, communism in the 20th century vein was like, hey, how can you actually plan something? The market can always do it better. But in the age of data analysis and stuff like that, and AI, then like you really could have a system where decision making could be just given over completely, and the basis of power could be given over completely to AI. The question is, as humans, do we trust it or not? Honey 32, let me just put on these subtitles for you. Hopefully they offer some assistance. And hopefully they work well, let's just say. All right, so rise of technology, important for applying solutions under technocracy. Role of technology, important for applying solutions. And the role of technocracy and cyberocracy is central for gathering, analyzing, and acting on information. Structure. Technocracy, hierarchical, experts at the top. See, this is what I was saying before. Technocracy is definitely a hierarchical form of government. Structure under cyberocracy is potentially decentralized and fluid. Now, I'm assuming that's because the basis of power is actually information networks, data analysis, and AI. So it's actually technology. It's not people that are the levers of power, let's say. Historical context. Technocracy emerged in the 20th century, especially the 1930s. Historical context for cyberocracy, a theoretical or futuristic model growing with the internet and AI. So this is a moving and evolving kind of topic, which is interesting. The goal of technocracy is to solve problems efficiently using science. You love science. And the goal of cyberocracy is optimize governments through superior information handling. It's really got a lot to do with, just info. Who's got the intel, man? Example, real or imagined. Technocracy, 1930s technocracy movement in North America. This is a big thing, by the way. Cyberocracy, future societies imagined in sci-fi, e.g. Neuromancer, Ghost in the Shell. Has anyone heard of those examples of sci-fi? I haven't come across Neuromancer or Ghost in a Shell. But, interesting stuff nonetheless. So let us go back to this documentary then, because I cut them off and then I've only gotten 30 seconds in and I was already cutting them off. So let's go back to see what they say.
That centralized that in
Technology systems.
a notion that technology and the ideology that informs it can govern human beings and centralize power among a certain elite.
Any kind of power that has freedom to shape the way you think, you behave, and the way you relate to one another. This is where authoritarianism is strangulating people's self-actualization and agency.
If you saw Donald Trump's inauguration, you saw the CEOs of the world's largest tech companies lined up in the second row in front of the United States cabinet. That is tech authoritarianism.
I've been saying this for ages. I haven't said what she's saying, that, this is tech authoritarianism. I'm just saying, these people, the biggest tech bros in the world, were front and center at Trump's inauguration. This is a nod to the fact that these people, if we're still under capitalism, these people are the most important sections of the bourgeoisie at the moment. That is an incredible nod to the power of Silicon Valley.
In a single image.
What does it say? How technocracy has become our reality.
If the technocrats who have infiltrated Washington are trying to install a new world order, and this feels like unprecedented times, know that they have tried this kind of thing before. In the early 1930s, a self-proclaimed American engineer named Howard Scott founded a movement called Technocracy Incorporated. America was in the midst of the Great Depression. Fascism was on the rise in Europe. Economic systems and democracies were being put to the test. Scott and his fellow technocrats had grown tired of what they saw as the waste, fraud, and abuse of government. They proposed replacing democracy with what they called a technocracy. Sound familiar? And when one examines the arguments that technocrats have made both then and now, one can see in their own words, mottos, and manifestos how democracy can be replaced by a form of tech authoritarianism.
Technocracy was appealing at a time when we were in a mass.
There's a Technocracy manifesto. Let's check that out. I want the manifesto, damn it. Yeah, apparently at its height, technocracy, like this is real, like technocracy, this movement in America had 500,000, like 500,000 followers in I want to say in California alone, which is mental. Still kicking around. I can't find their manifesto though. No way. Technocrat magazine. How good's that art? It's so good. All these politicians are running away. 30 million out of work in 1933, or 20,000 a year income for every family, which, yeah, technocrats. Chief Technocrat explains Technocracy. Oh, this is awesome. You have to download this. Read it later. The word technocracy, as representative of a new body of thought, means government by science. It has no connotation of dictatorship by the technician. Interesting. So this is first wave technocracy for you, Jerry Poppins. If you're still well, are you still around? I hope you're still well. If you're still around. Yeah, by science! Like, it's so good. Interesting, isn't it? How it works. Dollars in our present system is based on gold, and its value in terms of purchasing power varies. 1933. Technocracy would have the currency stand for energy units, which machines can create lavishly for everybody, and whose value could not fluctuate. Imagine that, replacing money with energy units. Like, this is some mental stuff here, ladies and gentlemen. Like, this is some real futuristic kind of stuff. This is mental. These people are what Mary Shelley was talking about in Frankenstein. Yeah, but like, it's still endearing. Like, you know, wouldn't it be nice to have something where like society is ruled more by some type of scientific mean than like the whims of like the capitalist class or something like that, and having like, you know, a currency based on something like energy units. So like how much energy is required, because like energy is a huge problem in an industrial civilization, and like the ethical distribution or the equitable distribution of energy is a big issue, especially with the rise of technology in the 21st century, where you have AI systems who take up a lot of energy power and stuff like that. And there's not enough energy to kind of go around. And these people are envisaging a society where energy is the currency, not money. The hell? Who are these people? Very interesting stuff. Uncle Sam hasn't enough gold dollars to satisfy everybody, but the technocrat promises enough energy dollars to give everybody the equivalent of $20,000 a year. This is really interesting. This is crazy. Who the hell's Jag? He'd appreciate this. All right, let's go back to it.
Mass societal upheaval. Technocracy was appealing at a time when we were in a mass societal upheaval. We had the
Gil Duran. It's Gil Duran. Gil Duran is the guy that introduced all of us to the network state. This guy is an absolute like titan in the world of like analyzing what the tech bros are really up to. How would the energy dollar work? Would they be given a card to transfer, or is it just like crypto? That's a really good question. Let's go back. ChatGPT will tell us. I'm just going to copy and paste that one. It's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. Let's go here. Hey, she liked your question, Ollie Atlas. Good question. You're thinking about it in exactly the right way. In the technocracy movement of the 1930s, especially in North America, the idea of energy certificates, sometimes called energy dollars, was a key part of how they imagined running the economy without money in the capitalist sense. Here's how it's supposed to work. Instead of earning wages in dollars, people would be allocated a certain number of energy certificates a year. These certificates would represent the amount of energy it would take to produce goods and services, measured in something like kilowatt hours. You could spend your certificates on goods and services, and each item would have an energy cost instead of a price based on market competition. Once you spent the certificates, they would be cancelled, not recirculated like money, no accumulation or hoarding. This is incredible. Like, can I say, like, that's not a bad idea in terms of like rejecting the notion of hoarding money, which is something that, you know, Keynes tried to do. He tried to provide, what did he call it? It was a form of monetary circulation, or no, it's a form of currency that is that oxidizes. So this is a really interesting concept. Okay, I wonder if you've come across this, Florius, in your Keynesian research. But Keynes envisaged a type of currency that, if it's not in circulation, so it's not in use, if people try to hoard it in a savings account or something like that, it oxidizes in, like, maybe not the literal sense, in a figurative way, as in like it rusts. And so, like, it's not useful anymore. So unless the money is in circulation, so unless you're using your money because you're collecting it from working, and then you go to the shop to use it to buy something, and like you continue to circulate it as a currency, because that's what currency is supposed to do. It's supposed to circulate goods and services. It oxidizes. It loses value, basically, if you're not using it or you're just accumulating it, or something like that. So once you've spent the certificates, they would be cancelled. The certificates would likely be tracked electronically. Interesting. Like on a card or in a centralized account, because the technocrats imagined a highly automated system even before modern computers existed. This is very interesting. Can I say, like, I'm sure this could be used nefariously, but this stuff sounds really, really, like, cool. It sounds like something that, like, you could get behind as a revolutionary, let me just say. So today, if we implemented it, it would look something like a personal account or a card tied to your yearly allocation, transfers made digitally, similar to how a debit card works today, but you're spending energy units, not money. Or blockchain technology could theoretically manage it, similar to crypto, but without speculation, just as a tool to record transactions. In short, it would feel like a debit card loaded with energy units each year, but with no profit, interest, or savings involved. And you can't make more by investing or speculating. Very interesting. How would transfer of the energy to another person work, like for a paycheck, or someone to their friend or their kid? I don't know. Let's see if they've gone that far down the rabbit hole. Shall we? Shall we? Excellent question. Short answer, you wouldn't be able to transfer energy certificates to other people at all. Not for a paycheck, not for gifts, not for loans, not even to your own kid. Here's why. Energy certificates were not transferable. They were issued individually to each citizen based on need, not work performed. Based on need, eh? There's one for the communists in the video right now, or in the watching the stream, eh? Everyone would automatically get an equal share of the total available energy of the economy, regardless of their job. Work wouldn't be paid for in the way under capitalism. Instead, work was seen as a duty organized scientifically by technocratic planners. If you had extra certificates left over, you can sell them, trade them, and give them away. They would just expire. This is some, very closely communistic kind of stuff here going on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and like it says here in the technocracy movement, the movement was committed to abstaining from all partisan politics and communist revolution. Like they were anti-communist, but like, you know, they seem to have taken the best parts of like, you know, a capitalist system and a communist system and tried to meld them together under the guise of science and expertise. So for example, if you were a worker, you wouldn't get a paycheck. You'd already have your own energy allocation. If you're a kid, once you reach a certain age, you'd start getting your own personal allocation. If you wanted to give something to a friend, you would just buy it from them. You wouldn't be able to give them your actual certificates. So there's still money, I guess. The goal was to eliminate things like wealth accumulation, profiteering, financial inequality, economic dependency. In short, under technocracy, energy certificate idea, no one would transfer their energy units to anyone else. Each person shares their own use. So let's say with this one, this point here insinuates that there is still other currency outside of energy certificates or credits. Is that the case? Well, like she said in this current example that, sorry, your question was, what would there be to prevent energy from being stolen, like through hacking? She said in a modern example here, you would have it in a way of, what did she say? Yeah. Or blockchain-like technology could theoretically manage it. Or like a debit card. So like, you know, like with debit cards today and stuff like that, people still can hack them. So like, I don't think it's foolproof, but like blockchain technology would probably assist, I would assume. It's supposed to be more secure. In the technocracy model with energy certificates, there wouldn't be any other currency in the traditional sense, like dollars, euros, or cryptos. Or crypto. The energy certificates would be the only currency. When I mentioned buying something for a friend, I meant you could still use your own energy certificates to purchase goods and services for someone else. Okay. You wouldn't transfer credits to them, you just buy it for them. Okay, fair enough. This is interesting. Very interesting. Right, back to Gilderan, tech journalist.
The Great Depression. We were barreling toward World War II, whether we knew it or not. And so you're going to get out of that desperation movements of people who think they have found the answer and who seek to impose that answer on a wider section of society.
Instead of the mess and compromise and debate of human politics, that is the very stuff of democracy. You had this idea that you could technocratically manage. You just needed a couple of scientific figures sitting somewhere with perfect information about the rest of us, making decisions for everybody else.
In the case of Scott, it turned out he was inflating his credentials, but as he became more famous and there was more scrutiny.
What do they mean by that? Inflating his credentials? What was his name anyway? Scott. One of the founders of Technocracy in North America, a gentleman by the name of Scott, I have heard accusations that he inflated his credentials as a criticism of the technocracy movement in the 1930s. Full stop. Do you have any information on what this is about? Question mark. Bragging or exaggerating? Yeah, but like what? Like, is it... Okay. Because I'm assuming he's setting up a society of experts, and if he's bragging about him being an expert in something and he's not, that's a good way to kind of discredit the entire movement, I guess you would say. You are likely referring to Howard Scott. one of the key figures in technocracy movement in North America during the 30s. He played a major role in promoting the movement's ideas, but there were indeed some controversies surrounding his background and credentials, exaggerating credentials. One of the main criticisms of Scott was that he inflated his academic and professional credentials. For example, Scott claimed to have earned a PhD in engineering from Columbia University, but there is no solid evidence to support this claim. It was later suggested that he might not have completed his studies at Columbia or had more limited academic background than he claimed. He also misrepresented his professional experience in some instances, presenting himself as a more accomplished engineer and intellectual than some critics believed he truly was. These accusations of self-aggrandizement, God, I love that term, self-aggrandizement, were part of a broader skepticism about the technocracy movement in general, especially in the United States, where many saw the movement's call for an expert-led society as potentially elitist or authoritarian. As Scott was one of the most prominent spokespeople for the movement, these allegations likely undermine the credibility of the technocratic vision for many people. Critics argue that if someone so central to the movement was caught up in such exaggerations, it raised concerns about its validity. Scott defended his background, but the accusations persisted and became a focal point for opponents of technocracy. These criticisms were used to paint the movement as untrustworthy or as a disorganized movement led by questionable figures. Whether or not these criticisms were fully justified, they certainly tarnished the image of technocracy at the time. All right, back to it. We're not getting far, but we're fact-checking, and we're fact-checking through ChatGPT, which is also a bit spurious, but, you know, we do it anyway, because we need to try and get on with stuff.
It became clear that technocracy was built on a foundation of sand. And it sounded really good to people desperate for an answer or thinking that science can save the day. But unfortunately, it was all a flawed premise.
It is very ironic that a movement purporting to be one that rides above politics, one that rides above personality, depends on a cult of personality, depends on a leader presenting himself as a certain type of person, right? In this case, fraudulently, manufacturing credentials. But you know, this charismatic leader is always an important part of any political movement, even one that denies its own politics.
At its peak, Technocracy Incorporated boasted 500,000 members in California alone, but the movement failed to survive the scrutiny it attracted. It also came up against hostile media coverage. The New York Times ran more than 100 critical stories on it, and ultimately, Tech Inc. withered away. In retrospect, the group's real failing was it was ahead of its time. The technology of the day was just not up to the task. Its ideas did not die. They just went.
It had claimed to be scientific, yet it'd be illogical and bound to fail or fall apart. Well, it did fall apart as a movement, but it would appear that like technocrats or people using the guise of technocracy are trying to change and undermine the democratic system right now in America, I would say. And so, like, you know, it seems to be having a comeback in a way, but like, you know, it's all got to do with, yes, this either based or baseless claim that it's about being scientific. Like that, we saw the opening page of the magazine, the Technocratic magazine from the 30s, and it was just like, technocracy is about rule by science, like kind of thing. What was it exactly? What were the words that it used? It has no connotation to dictatorship by the technician, means government by science. That's first wave technocracy as well, if I can borrow terminology from the great Jerry Poppins.
Dormant, while the world, led by the US, got busy developing the technology that would usher us into the digital age.
After World War II, the United States was the unquestioned leader of the world. And World War II had taught the leaders of the United States that in order to win, in order to prevail, they must pour resources into science and engineering.
Typical narrative is regulation will stifle innovation, so you need to do less regulation.
Digital anthropologist? What is that? And her name is almost like PayPal. That's pretty crazy. Payal Aurora. Payal Aurora. Fucking digital anthropologist. That is a sick. Hey, is it too late to change my profession? I want to be a digital anthropologist. Indian anthropologist. Oh, which one is it? No. Payal Aurora is a digital anthropologist, author, and professor, and holds the chair in inclusive AI cultures at Utrecht University of FemLab, a feminist future of work initiative. Very interesting. All right. Is a digital anthropologist. Digital anthropologist, author, and professor, and holds the chair in, yes, we already looked at that. What the hell's a digital anthropologist? She writes extensively about the impact of new digital technologies in the global south, with a special focus on India, Brazil, and Namibia and Bangladesh, where she conducted substantive fieldwork. She gets invited to public and private organizations to comment on how to build technologies that include the world. Her work has been featured in international media outlets, including, She was invited on the popular We the People, NDTV, Indian television talk show, to discuss social media. Wow, digital anthropologist. That's so cool. I want to be a digital anthropologist. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna ask ChatGPT about this. Hello. What is a... Has anyone come across this term before? I am astounded. A digital anthropologist is someone who studies the ways in which digital technology and online spaces interact with human cultures and societies. Essentially, they explore how digital tools, platforms, and technologies are shaping human behavior, relationships, and social structures. Here's a breakdown of what a digital anthropologist does. Often research how people form communities, express identity, and engage in social interactions within digital spaces. They might explore how subcultures emerge online. So basically, if you've ever had to deal with like a Reddit or a subreddit group before, and you've been able to analyze the peculiar nature of these creatures, maybe you're a digital anthropologist. So hey, anyone out there who's interested in studying the cultures and subcultures that emerge online, think of things like Reddit threads or gaming groups. There you go. Yeah, it's right there. And I was being facetious. They analyze how digital technologies like the internet, smartphones, AI, or social media platforms affect social norms. A digital anthropologist might look at how people use social media to form personal identities, or how influencers shape cultural trends. Like someone like Charlie Kirk standing up and spouting the deranged notions of Curtis Yarvin, undermining democracy itself and calling for a system of illiberal democracy, so basically authoritarianism. Digital anthropologist sounds like a mad profession. I know. That's why I said, thank you for us. Is it too late to change? Can I become a digital anthropologist? Some digital anthropologists look at how traditional cultures adopt or resist new technologies, and how modernity intersects with old ways of life. In short, a digital anthropologist is someone who applies traditional anthropological methods to study how digital technologies impact human behavior. Like, this is mental. Anyway, back to Payal Aurora. Let's all just agree that's how we say it. Payal Aurora.
For more innovation, but the narrative is regulation will stifle innovation, so you need to do less regulation for more innovation. But actually, regulation, if done right, opens up markets. So it's more about what kind of regulation do we need which can enable innovation, because you can regulate monopolies and incentivize entrepreneurs.
The only reason that we got the computer age, really, is as a result of government intervention against a telephone monopoly, AT&T, in 1956.
I don't know about that. That's like, we've looked into the history of this already. We didn't get the computer revolution because they split up AT&T through antitrust legislation. Like, they got the computer because the deep state and like the CIA and the military were funding heavily into the development of technologies in Silicon Valley. And so because the military had been producing things like the internet, or APRANET, as like it was formerly known, and then they had to make like kind of more user intuitive interfaces for them, because not everybody was a computer engineer or a computer scientist or something like that. Then they developed computer technologies as a result of interference, or like, let's say, public-private partnerships between the military or the US government and elements of Silicon Valley that had set up, companies to service the military needs and the technological insatiable appetite of the government. And so it was like hand-in-hand private partnership between Silicon Valley and the government, and they developed the technology for the computer revolution. What she's talking about here is like how the communications infrastructure that held together the internet became kind of decentralized a little bit when they broke up AT&T, and like various communications companies started vying for that technology and all of the telecommunications infrastructure that was spread around the American continent.
A massive monopoly. But they also had a research arm called Bell Labs, and they had come up with the basis of computer chips. But because Bell Labs sat in the AT&T monopoly, Bell Labs didn't have the incentive to really develop that technology. They were just kind of sitting on the patent.
But like, they weren't the ones that created microchips either. I know what she's talking about. There was other people that came up with the idea of Bell Labs. Whoops. One of the most important research institutions in modern history. It was originally part of AT&T. Bell Systems' job was basically invent the future. Seriously, that was their mission. The transistor. Solar cells. Wow. The transistor. Here we go. Shockley. So William Shockley went away afterwards and set up his own company. And then there was like there was 8 people that kind of broke away from his company, Shockley's company, to go on and then produced IBM, I think. I built my own company with blackjack and hookers. You know what? Forget the company. After co-inventing transistor at Bell Labs, he left Bell Labs and he wanted to commercialize the semiconductor technology, but he was frustrated he wasn't getting all the credit that he deserved. So he founded Shockley Semiconductors in Mountain View, California, which would become later the heart of Silicon Valley. It was backed financially by Beckman. Shockley was a brilliant scientist, but a terrible manager. He was paranoid, erratic, and mistrustful. Started using things like lie detectors and micromanaged everything. The Traitorous Eight. These are the guys. The Traitorous Eight decided to leave and start their own company. Fairchild, that's the one. Fairchild Semiconductors. Birthplace of modern semiconductor industry. TLDR. William Shockley founded. Yeah, right. Yes, they can draw a family tree. That's amazing. What did I miss? Oh, it's Jack. No way. Oi, I called you out before. I was like, fuck, he would love to see this. Dude, we've gone down a rabbit hole, man. Like, MysterE, it's amazing the fragile egos of some of these tech bro types. I think that's like the one salient theme in like our study into the tech bros and stuff like that is like how fragile these people are. They think they are basically, because they're on the cutting edge of technology, that they're like God's gift to the human race, and like everything they touch turns to gold, and like they set up empires to like protect their own interests and stuff like that. Like what they've done is completely in a vacuum, and they haven't relied on anyone else in order to like, you know, get their ideas off the ground. It's incredible. You should really read Chip Wars if you want to know the history of the chip industry. Thank you very much. Another good recommendation. Have you read it? We've been looking at, Jack, if you're wondering, we have been looking at Technocracy, okay? And like Technocracy, might I add, is like, you know, like on face value, actually not too scary of a notion. Like if you look at it in terms of what it claims to want to achieve and what it claims to have as its core objectives, or even its core structure. But like, yeah, you have, great book. Okay. So William Shockley, there you go. Shockley Semiconductors, Traitorous Eight, Fairchild Semiconductors, and they created Intel and IBM. And then that was the formulation of Silicon Valley. Thank you, ChatGPT, for your very, very descriptive and insightful family tree there. That's lovely. All right, man, I got in a huge debate with some friends on all of this stuff last night. Yes, that's so good. Like I was having a debate with someone like last week about this, with Friendly Geordies 4AS. And like he was picking my brain about all this stuff that we've been looking into, and he was just like, "This is fucking crazy. Why don't I know about this?" And I was just like, "I don't know. Why don't you know about this?" So how did the debate go? What was the premise of it? Like, were they not agreeing with you? Is that why you're describing it as a debate, or you just mean you had a huge conversation and opened a lot of eyes, and shocked a lot of people? William Shockley styles. But yeah, we've been looking at Technocracy and like, you know, some of our revelations today. Well, he's not looking into it as such, but like he was kind of taking seriously the notions of how the tech bros are incredibly important members of, you know, the bourgeoisie, and how basically that all connects to the shocking and crazy stuff that's happening in America at the moment. It's not, just because Trump is an all-out authoritarian psychopath, but like it's related deeply to the desires of the tech bros who have not only funded his campaign, but provide a lot of the ideological framework to the decisions that are being made currently. So, you know, this Silicon Valley culture is more than just a bunch of like, you know, precious egos for us that need to be stroked and protected. But they are also people that, I don't know how to say it, that like just have grandiose opinions of themselves and want to, yeah, like I've said multiple times, want to recreate society in their own image. But yes, I'd be interested to know how your debate went, Jag, because like we have not only gone down a rabbit hole in this stream, but a rabbit hole over the last month and a half now.
So in 1956, the federal authorities settled a case against AT&T, the telephone monopoly, and forced AT&T to license thousands of Bell Labs patents for free. This then let other competitors come in and basically gave us the computer age altogether.
Isn't it funny how we didn't actually have this description when we did our our investigation into Silicon Valley's history and stuff like that? We didn't have this background of this Bell Labs in AT&T when they were broken up as a monopoly, and like they had to kind of divest a lot of their companies and like a lot of their patents and stuff like that, and give that out to the public domain, and that helped spur on kind of, you know, the transistor or the chip wars and stuff like that. It was basically me versus 3 others that are stuck on thinking that they can make a system better. We just need better candidates. And I tried to explain how it's so much deeper. Yeah, right. I'm stuck on thinking they can make the system better. We just need better candidates. Yeah, I think it is much deeper than that. And like, if these people are speaking about like kind of, you know, bourgeois democracy, we just need, you know, better politics in a bourgeois setting, like, you know, as a revolutionary, I would suggest that, you know, it's not going to happen. And like, you know, with bourgeois politics, you get bourgeois results. So like if they're actually worried about significant change, then like, you know, you got to look beyond the bourgeois system. And that's what basically, to summarize really quickly, Jag, that's what technocracy seems to be about. Like the really important quote, I think, from the technocrats themselves, these original technocrats from the 1930s, is if you look at their magazine, Technocrats magazine from 1933, it says here, and like this is why, like I said before, and like Jerry Poppins laughs, it's innocent in the sense that like it seems on paper to have good intentions at heart, but don't get me wrong, I know the way to hell is paved with good intentions. But here, the word technocracy as representative of a new body of thought means government by science. It has no connotation of dictatorship by the technician, which is not the technocracy that we're dealing with at the moment in the age of Musk and the tech bros, which is definitely a form of dictatorial technocracy, because, you know, they really want to kind of get rid of democratic systems and replace everything with panels of experts kind of thing. And you can see that like exemplified through Doge. You have him and some, you know, young, bright minds who are just experts at being efficient. And so they're just going to clean up the government service kind of thing. Because I chose not to identify with either party, I can't vote in the primaries. So they think my vote in the general elections doesn't matter. Whereas I said it doesn't matter who the candidate is. Ooh, look at you being all controversial. It doesn't matter who the candidate is. Yeah, people don't like when you're so blatantly, when you so blatantly expose the objective reality of politics, as opposed to like the ideological foundations. Like, you know, we should be voting for this person because they should be doing this. It's just like, yeah, but like objectively what's happening kind of thing. And like it is quite confronting, like you got to admit. And like, so like these technocrats anyway had like some very grandiose notions of revolutionizing society. And like, you know, whether you believe them or not in the name of science, like, you know, they had everything from changing, you know, their currency, even like getting rid of money and replacing the capitalist system itself with like, you know, systems of governance by expertise, as opposed to, you know, people that run the economy. So like they want to get rid of the capitalist class, the technocrats, which is interesting because I thought it was just a development of capitalism, but like they were, this is a revolutionary idea. And then got into a long debate about identity politics, and they were defending how it should be part of party platform. So this is my problem with like liberals. I'm assuming these people would be more liberal. And even if they are conservative, they all believe that identity politics should form part of policy and stuff like that. Because, you know, you have to protect kind of ideological interest groups in society, as opposed to like just protecting the interests of material classes, I guess you would say, or the material interests of certain castes, stereotypical liberals, yeah. And so like, I look, identity politics in the face of, you know, great atrocities and invasions to people's civil liberties, I'm all for it. So like, you know, if Trump was going to try and bring back segregation policies and then split whites and blacks and say that whites and blacks can't use the same bathroom or something like that, then like, you know, let's platform on identity politics for every day, like kind of thing. Let's go there, because like that is a significant division of the society based along racial lines or something like that. And we don't have to go back to a world like that. But like, you know, generally the identity politics of the 21st century is a lot more flippant than that, and like kind of turns on what's fashionable or trendy, as opposed to like real deprivation of people's humanity in a kind of in a broad sense, let's say, unless you're speaking about kind of like the way that people have been treating like migrants and aliens, I guess you would call them, or people that are not citizens and second class citizens in America. So like, you know, if you associate that with identity politics, then fine. Like some of those things have merit, but like, you know, you really should be keeping it to economic policy and like class interests and stuff like that. I agree with that. And sounds like you had a great conversation there. Love to have been a fly on the wall for that one. But yeah, we've been learning about technocracy, and it seems very revolutionary. But like, as yes, Jerry Poppins has described it earlier, which I think is very, very apt. You have this first wave technocracy from the early 20th century that like develops in the face of the Great Depression and responses to the failings of the capitalist world order, but like kind of doesn't want to go there in terms of the communism that is rising in Europe and like in America as well. But like it wants to detach itself from that and offers a scientific solution, a Western scientific solution to both the ails of capitalism and communism at the same time. So like this is the true third option. You know, when you hear people talk about like fascism as like the third option, like fascism is not a third option. It's just capitalism without the democracy and an infusion of capitalism with the state. But like this actually does seem like they're trying to set up a system that like gets rid of exchange society altogether. But like you would never hear the technocrats now, or like these people that are being accused of technocracy, like the tech bros and stuff like that, speaking so openly about like replacing capitalism they seem to be more than happy to work within the realms of a capitalist mode of production. They just want to, democratize their own currency. So like take away the power of the state and like bring in cryptocurrencies and stuff like that, and set up little opportunities for them to exit society through like, the network state, or set up their own private gated communities within existing capitalistic societies. But as libertarians, I don't think they have any problem with capitalism at all. And so like the differentiation between the modern technocrat and the first wave technocrat would be their libertarian fantasies, I would say. Anyway, would you say fascism, capitalism? Would you say fascism, capitalism, last-ditch effort to save itself in the face of potential revolution? Yes, I do believe, I've heard that theory expressed before by many a socialist or communist thinker, or just like a Marxist or a leftist, that, fascism is capitalism trying to, as a conscious mode of production, trying to ensure its own reproduction by taking away the democratic institutions in society that may risk its further continuation. And like shoring that up by marrying itself to the power of the state. I definitely believe in that theory. I think there's merit to it. But I also think that there's a general tendency in capitalism, even in the face, or even, not in the face of like some type of workers' revolution or something like that, to tend towards fascism. And like we're seeing that at the moment. I don't see any workers' revolution coming for America or anything like that, or for Hungary, or any of these places like the Philippines or anything like that, that have like basically instituted authoritarian, like hardcore authoritarian, illiberal democratic regimes, and like moving towards a more fascistic way of doing things, like basically merging with the corporate sector, and ensuring there is no democracy out there. I don't see these workers' revolutions coming, but I see a move towards a more fascistic way of organizing capitalist society. So I definitely think it's a response to revolution, but like I think it's also a tendency of capitalism to move to authoritarian means as inequality rises. Like when you have people that concentrate more and more power, and like can conglomerate more businesses together and hold more monopolistic power, and they can control more of the wealth in society and stuff like that, they tend to want to solidify that power, and then they change the political system to a more authoritarian or fascistic style to ensure they're able to hold on to it. But like in times where there's been more of an equitable distribution of wealth and political power and all that sort of stuff, you have kind of less of a turn towards a fascistic style of capitalism. So I guess it really depends on levels of equality, not just levels, not just like some type of pending workers' revolution. And so if the capitalist classes feel threatened by redistributive policies and like a general kind of level of equity in their culture, then they start to turn towards fascism as well. It's like almost a positive feedback loop. So like the more you kind of get set up your society and things become more and more unequal or inequitable, then like I said, it's like a feedback loop, and then things start to become more authoritarian and more fascistic as well. So interesting. But like, yes, I've heard a lot of socialist and leftist commentators of the Marxian kind of tradition describe things in that way. I wouldn't say there's a workers' revolution on the horizon, but people are definitely waking up, and you can only distract from the real issues for so long. Yes. Did you put quotation marks because you got censored? That's fucked. That's really fucked. Like that's not even that controversial, to be honest. But whatever. Okay, it's just part and parcel. It's just another Monday stream here on the old YT. Okay? Yeah. Fuck. Yeah, but people are waking up. But like, see, this is the thing though. Like, I would hope that if people are waking up, this kind of thing, and they're seeing the writing on the wall, man, like, I would hope that they're actually using class consciousness to guide their dissatisfaction with the system, or the expression of their dissatisfaction with the system. But that is generally not the case. They just get involved in identity politics or the culture wars, pick a side, and then get angry about, all the things that the other side is taking from them, never taking any responsibility for that, and like wanting to change the system itself, or become a more responsible citizen, just blaming somebody else. And that's where democracy really does fall over, is where the general citizenry are not a responsive citizenry, but a reactive citizenry. I think there's a big difference there. Being responsible, like responding to your environment and making it better, or trying to enact some type of change, as opposed to just reacting to everything that happens and becoming kind of nihilistic about it, or reactionary and conservative in your outlook, and like just demanding like we go back to a better time, a time that's gone and will never return to us, unfortunately. So look, we're going to pick up this investigation into technocracy. We're going to continue this on Twitch tomorrow. I'm going to leave it there because I have editing to do, unfortunately. But like, yes, we're going to continue our investigation of technocracy tomorrow on Twitch. So same time, different place. If you are interested, I think this has been very interesting. Very interesting, surprisingly. I didn't think we were going to go down this rabbit hole today. I just wanted to watch Al Jazeera and see what they had to say about the technocrats. But like, we got, like in 2 hours, we got 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes into that documentary. We've just been fact checking so much stuff. So like, thank you very much for everyone who's come along today and joined us. Jerry Poppins, thanks for starting us off. You too, Ollie Atlas, appreciate it. And Wings of Cheese, of course. Honey32, it was good to have you in for a little bit. I hope you appreciated the subtitles. 4AS popping in, even though he's working. And then Jake coming in at the end there. I do appreciate everyone. And for anyone who's just been watching in the background too, if that's you, thank you very much. And like, if you're wondering what we're going to be doing tomorrow, like I said, we're going to be over on Twitch. So let me just give you the address for Twitch. If you're interested in joining us over there and you're not on Twitch at the moment, or you're not with us on Twitch at the moment, here is, give me a second. Here is the link for that, so you can go over and follow there, and we will be 11 o'clock AEST, so Eastern Australian time, tomorrow, and we're going to continue this investigation because technocracy is actually turning out to be very interesting, might I add. Surprisingly quite interesting. Yes, so thank you everybody for your attendance today. Really appreciate it. And we will continue this investigation tomorrow. And until then, please remember, I am, you are, we are a MysterE. See you all tomorrow. Cheers.